it is at least astonishing that a referee with only 15 Champions League appearances is allowed to lead such a game. And that may also explain one or two whistles. Let's bring in Christina Unkel to join us, our rules expert. Christina, good to see you. What about that decision then that wasn't given in Bayern Munich's favour for the potential handball in the box? What did you think of it? Right decision in the end?
So this is what shows that there is a lack of understanding and knowledge of the nuance of the handball law. That was the correct decision to not award for a penalty for handball. That was correct by VAR to not intervene, because anytime you have a clearance by a defender who is kicking and clearing the ball out from and is going towards up the field and it hits another defender of theirs, that is not considered a deliberate handball offense. This is one of those exceptions. It's not deliberate because you go back to the purpose of the handball. Are you gaining an unfair advantage? Are you gaining a competitive advantage? And here, a defender clearing the ball outside of their, the defensive third, moving up the field into a close range of a fellow defender into their direct hand. What competitive advantage are they gaining? And this is why it's an exception to the rule. It is not a handling offense. It doesn't matter necessarily where his arm is. He's not taking an advantage away from anybody in that sense. And that's why it sits as an exception. And that's where I've kind of really learned very quickly. I promise you when the situation happened. Thank you for everyone who tweeted at me. But that's the reason why. That's the answer why.
Okay. Hey, how are you?
This is why I kind of snorted everybody. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna. How was the ball?
Yes.
I'm gonna start with this. For me, I think it's handball because of the handballs we saw in the last couple months. Now, I understand the rules, what you're saying. This situation happens to be the ball's going 30 yards up the field, and Bayern Munich is not gaining any advantage from it. But you could argue now that the same thing happened, and it was a fluffed one. Right? Let's say he fluffs the clearance, right? And it hits Joao Neves' hand. And at the back of Joao Neves was Alphonso Davies or someone ready to volley it in, right? Now you could say, oh, but his own player kicked it off Joao Neves, right? And so it's not a handball. But what about if there was a player ready to receive that ball from Bayern Munich to go and finish it off? You see what I'm saying? Because we're anticipating that ball was going up the pitch. But what about if the same situation happens? It's a fluffed clearance, hits Joao Neves in the hand, which would have gave Bayern Munich an advantage. Then what happens?
So it all comes back down to this deliberate, and that's where a bit of the subjective analysis is. So the situation you're giving, and those that you said, hey, we've seen these in the past couple of months, we've seen it when it's an attacker taking a shot going towards the goal, right? So the situation is different here. Defender is the one who's initiating the contact coming out. Your scenario is saying, okay, if it hit his hand and his hand, presents it because he snuffed the ball and it would have gone to somebody else's foot, etc. We have to get back now down to the question of, was it deliberate? And by deliberate meaning, once again, is it outside of the silhouette? Is it taking away a competitive advantage? Was it done that basically prevented that ball from going into it? And that's where that subjective side of it. Here in this situation, and the default, by the way, is always, the exception is defenders kicking it out, hits another defender, no handling offense. Now, if you put in an exception, and to every exception, there's an exception. Sorry, I'm driving everyone crazy right now. Welcome to Lawyer Talk. But that's where that consideration in your situation is being put into it. Then we have to talk about, is that actually deliberate? Did he actually raise his hands up to knock the ball down, to prevent it to go to, I think you said Alphonso Davies, right, to put it into the back of the net? That's where that conversation about whether it's deliberate or not exists. But for today's situation, that doesn't exist. And that's why it's not that answer. And it's not previous examples, because those were the attackers going into the goal.
The problem, though, is with it is that there's going to be another example that's going to happen, and we're going to say, oh, no, but this one's different, right? If I'm on the line, I'm a defender, I'm clearing the ball off the line, right, for my team. Now, Harry Kane is sitting there, right there. He's right there. He's going to tap this ball. It's a duffed clearance. He's ready to head this thing home. But before it gets to Harry Kane's head, it hits Joao Neves in the hand from his own defender. Are we going to call that a handball in that situation? You get what I'm saying? So the defender's cleaning it off the line. He clears it off the line. It fluffs up in the air. Harry Kane's ready to head it in, but it hits Joao Neves' hand first.
Well, then the question goes to,
right? You would say that's a handball.
No,
so
we still have distance. You still have to talk about distance, right? So what everyone is, there's a couple of considerations, right? Distance, was the person's hands outside their silhouette? Who's the person who cleared it? Was there a deflection prior to it hitting it? I'm sorry?
His hand was outside his silhouette.
Hand is outside of his silhouette, but then you're also talking about where was the distance to it. So in your scenario that you're explaining it, was the other fellow defender less than a foot away, right? And his arm was here. Was he less than a foot away? And that's where when you say...
Same situation, but it's going to fall to Harry Kane and he's going to score instead.
Same situation is going to fall to Harry Kane and he's going to score, or it does fall to Harry Kane, right? And he's about to score. That's pretty much the scenario that you're putting into it.
No, it's going to, but it hit Joao Neves' hand first, let's say.
Well, it comes back down to distance, direction, and the default answer, similar to, which I know everyone hates talking about, is red card hair pulls. The default answer is no handling offense. Then you got to start adding into those elements of like, but is there an exception to that exception? And in this situation, it's going to be really, really hard to say. No, it would probably still say the same according to the interpretations and the guidelines and the video clips that we get generated of saying once it hits a defender's hand, it's a close distance. There is really no in the underlying instincts to say that there's an unfair advantage. We would want and prefer from the laws of the game and the application to the referees, no handballing offense, even in your scenario.
Christina, I got two questions. One, it just gets week to week more confusing. I'll be totally honest with you, it gets more confusing and it's harder for you referees to even interpret it when you start going into nuances and distance and all of this stuff. Why can't we make it just a simple rule anymore? That's the first question. The second question is, to what the Bayern Munich CFO was just saying there, you're talking about getting experiences in the biggest games, right, for referees. Do you agree that maybe a more experienced ref should be handling these bigger games? 15 games of Champions League is a short amount of body of work. It's hard for players. It's definitely got to be hard for referees in those type of environments as well, right?
Yeah, no, and I'll address your first question first. Yeah. So it has been. The law and the handling has changed over the past 15 years, probably about 4 times. Yeah. And there's been many arguments here. Just keep it simple. If it hits a hand, it's a handball offense. Okay, no problem. That was applied. Then everyone said, ooh, that's way too draconian, right? There's no unfair, there's no competitive advantage, like, et cetera. Now we're going to add distance to it. We're going to add who hits it. Then that actually was taken back and it says, no, we're not going to think about that. We're going to go back to a little bit more draconian if it hits your hand. Then everyone's like, we don't like this again. Those are typically games that happen in World Cups and, to be quite honest, in Champions League games where they're like, it's too harsh of a rule and the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So now we're back once again to saying, and it was even like 2-3 years ago, distance wasn't a consideration. So even if it was a close shot by an attacker and it hits a defender's hand and they don't have time to move their hand out of the way, we were still giving it as penalties. That was as late as 3 years ago. Now we've added distance and time to react back into the analysis. So I'm with you on it. We keep going back and forth every single year, even myself still, I'm making sure I'm up to date with the latest interpretations and applications that might not have changed the laws, but how they want to see it enforced, because it does change every 3 years and it changes on games like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a conversation, to your point, back to let's just punish it again if it hits your hand, regardless if the defender clears it, so that you can kind of get that result. That's kind of a little bit of the power of UEFA has in the sense of those clubs who are able to advocate on IFAB. Now, to your second point, body of work is incredibly important. I don't agree with the CEO of Bayern. He hasn't only had 15 or 16 games. He's actually had 21 games in the Champions League. Last year, he refereed the 2025 UEFA Super Cup against PSG and Tottenham, and he was the 4th official on the PSG and Inter last year, right? Oh, wow. He's done the Confederations, or what do we have over here, the Conference Cup semifinals. I mean, the gentleman has had over 50 games in the UEFA at these competitions. Plus, if you look at this year and this year alone, he is a 2026 World Cup referee. In a World Cup year, you go to a series of pretty much 8 camps. A couple of my friends are going to the World Cup. You're never home in a year, in a World Cup year leading up to it. When you're at all these FIFA events, sometimes you can't go to some of these UEFA games and these UEFA tournaments because you're at World Cup seminars and preparing. So from his body of work, from what he's done, where this next step of phase of play is, and trust me, UEFA is probably one of the strictest, in my opinion, of the referee observers and whether they think this is qualified. These are big clubs. These are big competitions. This is, one would argue millions, some would argue billions because of the, the fallout. His body of work wouldn't have surprised you that he got this assignment. Is it a big game? Is it tough? Did you feel the crowd changing on him, and did you feel the team? Yes, but we've seen this happen to some of the best referees in the world, even after they've done incredible World Cups, like Simon Marciniak, right? He had a really tough game the next season. So, you're only as good as your last game, is what we say. The games he had prior to this, he was very, very good.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for answering both the questions. Really quickly, Mendes, should he have been sent off? What's your take on it?
Mendes, this is our double second yellow card, right? So, or this one right here, that is what they got, was the right hand. So the foul occurred prior to. Now, if that foul had not occurred prior to, the answer would have been yellow. Yes, he should have gotten a second yellow card for stopping a promising attack by hand. But because the foul prior to the handling happened prior to it, that's what took that away. And I understand that they didn't know that at that moment, but that is the reason why the referees didn't give that decision. Reminder, that second yellow card, though, at this moment would not have been able to be reviewed by VAR. In the future, for UEFA next, that is included in the VAR protocols.
Christina, I thoroughly agree with you. Go and enjoy yourself. Have more champagne and caviar. You were right. That first one should have never been a handball, and I'm with you.
Wow, Nigel Grella, I don't know how you guys are sitting next to each other today.
Okay.
I said watching it there that it shouldn't be a handball.
I
agree with your explanation because Grella here was making up scenarios in a situation that never happened compared to the one that we just saw.
Because they're going to happen next week and they're going to have a different answer next week.
But listen, they tried to clear the ball, and for me, I'm with you, Christina. I don't want to see a penalty given like that.
If I'm in trouble, I'm just going to kick it into my own player's hand.
Good thing you're not playing anymore.
No, you're missing the big point. Nigel's always going to agree with Christina. That's all that matters.
Christina, are you still on your yacht?
I am no longer on the yacht. That was midnight last night. We got off. Late night.
Naughty, Christina, staying up past midnight, eh?
I know, this old girl can't do it anymore.
Oh, wait.
I can tell you that.
I'm just hearing, Christina, we've got another look that shows the
Bayern player
didn't handle.
Apparently did not handle the ball.
Oh, he did not.
All right, so they're saying it hit his stomach to the side.
Yes,
all right,
no,
well,
and it didn't hit his hand here.
Yeah, so for those who are seeing this after, I mean, obviously it's unfortunate. If you think about the referee, where the referee would be, they would be closer to the center circle, right? They're sitting there, they're thinking it hit the right hand. The right hand's exposed, right, to the right-hand side. The only other person who might give you information that it might have hit their hand would have been the fourth official if they were active and looking at that angle. But similar to, what was it that we had yesterday, once the referee's whistle goes and the decision is made, you know, the secondary action won't be determined because the ball's already dead. And once again, this does not yet fit into the VAR protocol for a second yellow.
Whoa. Could have been a red card.